Welcome to Righting Wrongs here at Hudgell Solicitors, the easy guide to the legal issues many people have to deal with in their lives. I'm Keith Phillips, and joining me to discuss birth trauma and birth injury claims is Solicitor Maria Repanos, Head of Medical Negligence here at our Hudgell's office in Manchester. Welcome, Maria.
Thank you, Keith. Good to be here and to be able to talk about birth trauma today.
Well, Maria, you're a solicitor with many years' experience of medical negligence claims, and many of your clients will be women and children who have been harmed in pregnancy or during birth.
That's absolutely right. We deal with many clients who've sadly suffered birth traumas, and it's just not unusual for women to suffer birth traumas, even in scenarios where there's no negligence related to the trauma itself at all.
Can you explain what birth trauma is in the first instance?
I think according to the Birth Trauma Association, who we work quite closely with, a birth trauma means the distress that you suffer having either gone through or witnessed a traumatic event or a traumatic birth. And this can have obviously a profound effect on some individuals, and the symptoms following witnessing a birth trauma can be quite severe, insofar as some individuals can suffer post-traumatic stress disorder as a result of it.
Now, many women will suffer a birth trauma, but it's not always down to negligence.
That's absolutely right. In the vast majority of cases, a birth trauma will not be as a result of medical negligence and can be down to a woman suffering a traumatic birth, which might involve an assisted delivery, such as one with forceps or an emergency caesarean section, or they can also sadly suffer a postpartum hemorrhage. So difficult labours themselves, which doesn't denote a negligent treatment provided during labour, that can also denote somebody then suffering a birth trauma afterwards.
Maria, when will medical negligence, play a part in birth trauma or birth injury?
It can play a part, and it can often be where we've worked, for example, with a number of families where they felt let down by medical professionals in relation to the management of the labour and delivery. And it can result from whether it's through poor communication or just negligent treatment in terms of how those healthcare professionals have looked after them.
Well, these women, these families, they'll feel let down. Can they ask for an investigation into what went wrong?
Individuals are certainly entitled to request investigations if they feel that they've been let down and something's gone wrong. In terms of whether that denotes negligent medical treatment, that's quite different. But certainly if something has gone wrong and an injury is being caused as a result of that, there would be more of a reason for an investigation to be carried out. But individuals certainly have the entitlement to make a complaint, and through that complaints process, an investigation should be carried out, and they can ask whatever questions they like in respect of the management of the labour and delivery or anything in connection with any of their medical treatment, and to understand what's happened to them.
Maria, if someone has suffered a birth injury or birth trauma, when might they want to seek legal advice?
Ultimately, individuals will come to us to seek legal advice when they feel something went wrong or that they've been let down by healthcare professionals. So I think if they feel that they have suffered negligent care during the management of the labour and delivery, then I would absolutely recommend that they seek legal advice from an experienced firm of solicitors in dealing with these types of cases, and to do so at the earliest opportunity and when they feel ready to do so.
Maria, you've got many years of experience of representing clients. Can you give examples of cases where you've successfully represented them?
Yeah, we represent many women and children in connection with birth injuries. In terms of the women we represent and the types of cases I've seen, they can relate to vaginal tears, uterine rupture, prolapse, quite severe hemorrhages. At the more sort of tragic end of things, we sadly see stillbirths as well. And in terms of some of the injuries that we see affecting some of the children we represent, we deal with cases relating to cerebral palsy, where there's been a deprivation of oxygen either in the antenatal or early neonatal period, and also Erb's palsy, which is a nerve injury which affects the shoulders, hands and arms.
Well, typically, what mistakes are being made in pregnancy or childbirth where women are being harmed?
There are a number of issues that can impact on those injuries. There can be a failure to appropriately investigate issues in the antenatal period. There can be procedures that are performed in a substandard manner, whether that's an episiotomy or a caesarean section. There can be errors in relation to suturing techniques. There can also be mismanagement of infection during the early neonatal period or the postnatal period. There can also be issues, for example, where swabs are being left.
And in terms of children, what mistakes are being made there where children are being harmed?
Again, there are a number of issues that can lead to those injuries arising, such as whether it's cerebral palsy or Erb's palsy. So there can be issues relating at the earliest point in relation to the misinterpretation of scans and imaging. Also potential failures to carry out investigations. In terms of the management of the labour and delivery itself, there can be either delays in performing caesarean sections. There can be issues where there are failures to escalate issues and to act upon issues. Sometimes there are issues to do with reduced fetal movements that are not acted upon at all or not acted upon quickly enough.
Maria, you touched upon it earlier. One of the most tragic consequences of mistakes being made in pregnancy and childbirth is the loss of a child.
I think that's absolutely right. And we see many cases where there have been stillbirths, and the impact of those cases on the families themselves, it's absolutely devastating. Those cases have a huge, a profound impact on the families' lives, which is far-reaching and can impact on those individuals in terms of mental well-being and psychological injuries that have been caused as a result of it, and even down to their ability to continue to work.
What might be the negligent causes behind a stillbirth?
Again, there are a multitude of issues that can impact on stillbirths themselves. So there can be misinterpretation of tests and scan results. There can be failures to carry out appropriate tests. Again, there can be issues to do with fetal movements. So where there are, for example, reduced fetal movements, sometimes that's not acted upon at all, or it isn't acted upon quickly enough. There can be issues to do with management of infection. There can be issues to do with a lady's blood pressure, which then has an impact on the fetus itself, leading to a stillbirth. Also, there can be placental abruptions too.
If a mother of parents have experienced a stillbirth, can they expect an investigation to take place into what caused it?
They can certainly seek that if they wish to do so, and anybody is entitled to make a complaint where an informal investigation would be carried out within the trust. So I would always recommend, if families have questions that they wish to be answered, then they should certainly get the ball rolling and contact the relevant NHS trust for an investigation to be carried out. And I would also strongly urge them to seek urgent legal advice at the point when they feel ready to do so.
What would be, as a medical negligence solicitor, what would be your contribution to that investigation, whether it's a stillbirth, trauma or an injury?
Well, I think first of all, when we see clients, we want to understand what they wish to get out of the actual clinical negligence claim itself. Whilst the claim itself is about compensation, for many of the families that they represent, they want questions to be answered. They want meaningful change to be made. And not only that, they want somebody to be held to account. So we work closely with families to understand what their needs are. And we try to hold organisations to account where we feel that there has been negligent medical treatment. And ultimately, this drive of change does ultimately improve patient safety, and families simply want these matters to be avoided so other families don't go through what they've been through, and that's often incredibly important to the people that we represent.
Also, bringing a negligence claim can also help provide counselling, for example, help with the grieving process.
Yeah, that's absolutely right. So within the remit of the claim, if it's relevant to do so, we would bring, for example, in a stillbirth case, if a mother has suffered a psychological injury as a result of that, part of in terms of the heads of loss and what we seek from the defendant, we would certainly in those cases, if they've suffered a psychological injury, we would be looking at therapies or counselling that might be relevant, and we would instruct medical experts, as we do in all of our cases, to tell us what the injury is and what medical treatment's required. So whether it's in a stillbirth case or another case, we understand what the cause of injury is and how we can best remedy that or seek treatment in relation to that injury, whether it's for a mother for a psychological injury or for a child.
Maria, if anyone is listening today and they've been affected by a birth injury, birth trauma, or even a stillbirth, it is important to seek specialist legal advice.
I think that's absolutely right. These are specialist cases and they require specialist input from the right solicitors. So at Hudgell's, we have a dedicated team that are extremely experienced in dealing with these cases, and we also work very closely with a registered midwife, so we can understand the issues involved in a case at the outset. In every case that we run of this nature, we obtain our clients' medical records, and then we instruct relevant medical experts to tell us what went wrong and also why, and for us to understand whether injuries and the consequences were avoidable.
Maria, thanks very much.
Thank you.
Medical negligence solicitor Maria Repanos, who specialises in birth trauma and birth injury claims here at Hudgell Solicitors. Thanks for listening to Righting Wrongs. And if you need further information regarding any medical negligence issue, head to our website, hudgellsolicitors.co.uk.